Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I know we have a lot coming in, so we'll give it just a minute here. I'm watching the number of participants go up. This is great. Welcome, welcome for those who are just popping in. We'll get started in just a second. All righty, we want to make sure we give our presenters all of their time allotted. So I'm going to get started. Welcome to the College Fairs of Greater Denver. We're so excited to have you participating in this event. We have some fantastic folks here with us today. My name is Chelsea and I will be your facilitator. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. This is one of many sessions happening, so be sure to check out the additional ones on the website. This presentation is being recorded and will be available at strivescan.com/greaterdenver. And without further ado, I'm very excited to turn it over to our presenters and the first panelist, Stephanie.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll begin this slideshow. My name is Stephanie Panion and I'm the Scholarship Program Manager for the Boettcher Foundation Scholarship. We'll talk a little bit today first about tips for applying for scholarships, and then I'll tell you a little more specifically about my scholarship, and then we'll hear from my friend Josh at the Daniels Fund as well. So first, I just wanted to remind you of a few places you could start your search for scholarships. First of all, being your high school guidance counseling office, since they're usually the primary point of contact at your school. Be sure you're also checking out the colleges and universities as well, because they have scholarship opportunities. And often if you apply by their primary deadline or the priority deadline, you're simultaneously applying for scholarships as well as admission to the school. And there are several other sources on this website, or excuse me, this slide as well. The easiest way to find scholarships, though, is online. Go ahead and snap a picture of this slide with your cell phone if you've got it. These are just a few potential sites to help you start your search, though you can probably find a lot more on your own. Please remember never to pay for scholarship searches, and you should be able to save your money and find resources for free. Now, when it comes to earning scholarships, there are two ways to do it. The first is by what you do in school to make yourself competitive, and the second is by how you fill out the application in a way that sells yourself. So we'll talk a little bit about both of those. When it comes to scholarships, particularly merit-based scholarships, the things you want to focus on are on this slide: your academics, community service, and your extracurricular activities. And we put them in this order to help you remember that if you focus on these three things, you can ace your scholarship applications. So we'll do a quick deep dive into each of those. When you hear about merit scholarship, you probably think about grades first and foremost, and that is important, but it's more faceted than that. In addition to grades, we're also looking for a strong academic record and a college prep curriculum, meaning we're looking for students who are pushing themselves and challenging themselves in readiness for college. It'll look better on your transcript if you're getting a couple of B's in more challenging classes than just getting straight A's in super easy classes. So demonstrate that you can do the work to be successful in college. 4 years of course subjects, be sure you're taking all those in high school while you can, just not taking courses that you'd have to pay to take in college if you can take them here for free. And then of course your standardized tests. In this day and age, those can be optional, so check with every college you want to apply to and scholarships and see what their policy is. If possible, take the test twice. Sometimes you can do better the second time around, but I know that right now that may not always be possible just due to limitations. So if you can only take it once, plan ahead and practice in advance. When it comes to the C of ACE, community service, a lot of students wonder what we're looking for in terms of types or how many hours. But really what we're looking for are things like the depth of commitment, length of participation, and leadership and initiative you demonstrate within that service. So as you see in the slide, we're looking for quality of your activities versus quantity. It's better to do a few activities and do them on a regular basis, do a deep dive in them, and have a greater impact than just to do an activity once or twice just to make up some hours. So it's good to find those things you're passionate about, because that's going to keep you going back, which will allow you to have leadership opportunities that you couldn't do if you were just going on a sporadic basis. Same thing for the extracurricular activities. I'm not going to tell you what activities you have to do. That's up to you and your passions, but make sure that you're doing them in a deep way to increase your impact. I do want to highlight on this slide that work counts as an extracurricular activity, whether there's a special work section or whether you can fold it in with an extracurricular activity section. So if you're working for any reason, such as to help support your family, make sure you're getting credit for that on your scholarship and college applications. Now we're going to move quickly on to the second part of earning your scholarships, which is how to make your application stand out. What can you do to make sure that you're filling it out in the best way possible to sell yourself? And the most important thing I can tell you is take a moment before you submit your application to shift your perspective. Pretend you're me. Pretend you're someone reading the application who might never have been to your school, who maybe has not been to your community or even to your state if you're applying someplace out of state. And make sure that you're telling them what they need to know in order to understand who you are and what you do and what makes you a compelling candidate. For instance, I always talk about how in high school, I was in a club called Colts in Action, named after my school's mascot. But if I just put Colts in Action on the application with no explanation, the person reading it would not have any understanding of what that is, why it's important, or what I contributed. So you want to make sure you provide that detail. And we'll give some examples of how you can do that coming up. Because just as a reminder, committees are not just looking for candidates who are competitive, but they're also looking for candidates who are compelling. They want a little bit more deep information about you than just numbers or the grades on your transcript. They want to know your talents, your hobbies, what makes you original, what are your characteristics that make you stand out. You'll never hear me talk about a Boettcher Scholar as being the one with the good grades and the good test scores. I'll talk about specific examples of what made them stand out, such as Francis Birdboy, who really loved birds and volunteered to track migratory patterns and went on to research owls later on in his life. That passion is what sticks in my mind. So here are just a couple of quick examples of how you can make yourself stand out. If your service activity is food bank volunteer, that's great, but we could have a lot of those. What makes you unique is that length of participation we see here, depth of participation, and leadership and initiative. 20 hours per week is a great example of that length of commitment, and coordinated a food basket distribution shows leadership and initiative. So go a little deeper. Same thing with club descriptions. Student council. We all know what student council is. It's a great organization, but what makes you stand out is what you contributed, such as this person in this example, who served as vice president, represented their school at a conference, and chaired the prom committee. Lots of great examples of leadership in there. Essays are very important too. This is where, after the resume section, you get to tell us the why or the how behind the activities that you've done. Why did you choose them? What makes you passionate about them? How did you get involved? So you want to take your time in the essays to round out that information and tell us more. They should also be a good demonstration of your academic ability in terms of your writing. So make sure you're taking the time to review the essays, draft them a couple times, and be sure you're answering the question that is asked. Remember, they also are a chance to reveal those things that are unique about you, your characteristics, your personality. So let them be in your voice, not someone else's. We want to hear who you are, not who you think we want you to be. So make sure you're using your own words, imagery. If you're funny, let it be funny. That's okay. If you're more studious, you can just have a more serious, straightforward essay. Just make it authentic to you. So here's another slide I'd love you to take a picture of. So I give webinars. There are a few listed on this slide that are coming up that go over some of the things I've already talked about, but in a lot more detail. And in addition to that, I'll go over tips about letters of recommendation, interviewing, etc. And we'll also hear from some of our alumni. So if you'd like to hear more details about some of this information I've presented, feel free to register via that website. If you cannot attend one of those webinars, we do have a recorded version on our website as well. It's a little bit shorter, but it's just another way to get this information available to you. And so now I'm going to take just a few moments before I turn it over to Josh to talk about our scholarship in particular. At Boettcher, we believe in the promise of Colorado and the potential of Coloradans. And every day we champion excellence across our state by investing in our most talented individuals, such as high school students like yourself, and high potential organizations. And we do that because we believe supporting their hard work and leadership will enable them to give back to the state for years to come. The Boettcher Scholarship is one of Colorado's oldest and most prestigious merit-based scholarships, dating back to 1952, with the intent by the donors to keep Colorado's top students in state for their education, because they realized students were leaving the state feeling they had to go out of state for their education and not appreciating the great institutions we have right here. Starting this year, we are awarding 50 scholarships annually. We're very excited about that. And they are 4-year undergraduate scholarships that can be used at any 4-year college or university in Colorado, public or private. We now have 2 funding models for our scholarships. So depending on which Colorado institution you choose to attend, the funding model will either cover the full tuition and fees at the school or the full cost of attendance. And that breakdown can be found on our website. If we have time during the Q&A, I'll be happy to answer more questions about that. But for now, I just wanted to let you know you could find that information on our website about the funding models. And students in our program can also apply for additional grant funding to support enrichment opportunities or the ability to study abroad. But what's great about our scholarship, and Josh will also tell you this about his program, is that ours are programs and not just checks. They give the students more than just financial support. They give you a real community. So as you see here, we have a network of scholars, alumni, and community members. We have activities both on the campuses for our students and across campuses with other scholars at different schools. To apply for those grants, you have to go through a grant writing sequence that prepares you to do those kind of grant applications in college and beyond, and more opportunities for professional development. So in order to be eligible for the Boettcher Scholarship, you do have to be a Colorado high school senior. So you want to apply in your senior or final year of high school, who's lived in Colorado for at least the last 2 years, your junior and senior year of high school. You have to be a citizen, legal resident, or lawfully present in the United States, such as through DACA, or meet the requirements and have started that application process. For more information about that, visit our website or feel free to email me. And what we're looking for are the things you see on this slide. We're looking for students with superior scholastic ability and intellectual curiosity who've demonstrated leadership and involvement and service to their school and community. And hopefully that's sounding familiar. That's the ACE that we talked about earlier. Those are the exact things that we're looking for. We're also looking for outstanding character, which we usually get in an application by how you answer your essays and tell us your stories and examples, and also from your letters of recommendation. If you're interested in applying and you're a high school senior, you can do so now directly from our website. Applications are due November 1 at 5 p.m. I do recommend starting the application early because it does take some time and you want to draft those essays. And please don't wait until the last minute to submit it. Give yourself some time to make sure everything's set and ready to go so that you're ready, that you've submitted it well before the 5 p.m. deadline, just in case you have any problems that you need to reach out to me for help with. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my presentation and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Josh.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephanie, and fantastic tips as far as general scholarship applications, and there's a lot of questions on timing. I think it's great to acknowledge, that you're here, and whether you're a junior hire or a freshman in high school, understanding the scholarship landscape and kind of what those opportunities are that are ahead are very important early on. And like Stephanie shared, a handful of this criteria, it's really hard to fake or to quantify if you just start thinking about these things once you're a senior. And so though most applications for specific scholarships happen your senior year, thinking about these things and the fit as associated with the kinds of scholarships and the overall whole picture of what those scholarships look like are important to think about throughout your journey, so that you can continue to develop your resume and the things you're passionate about and involved with in a community. So I'll continue on. Keep your questions coming. Stephanie is going to continue to answer those, and then we will have an extended time in the next 10 minutes or so, or after this next 10 minutes, where we'll be able to answer your questions for hopefully some engaged conversation. But just to cover just briefly again what the Daniel Scholarship is we're a scholarship that's funded by a foundation, and the foundation was created by Bill Daniels. He was a cable television pioneer, and upon the end of his life and his passing, the Daniels Fund was created to give back to students and provide a way and an opportunity for attainment of a degree. The Daniel Scholarship Program provides the opportunity for highly motivated students to earn a bachelor's degree that helps them build a successful career and rewarding life. Daniel Scholars demonstrate exceptional character, leadership, and a commitment to serving their communities. Bill Daniels would also want his scholars to be proud Americans who value our free enterprise system and are prepared to give the world their very best shot. So some of the selection criteria for the Daniel Scholarship is based on strength of character, leadership potential, commitment to serving their communities, academic performance or promise, well-rounded personalities, and emotional maturity and stability. And part of what Stephanie shared is understanding kind of your story and being able to write your applications outside of that. I think one thing that's important to highlight with students is that the people that are going to be reading your applications will evaluate all different things as far as how you show up in leadership and character. And it's important to kind of highlight that, because you guys are in the environments of your high schools. So you hear about sports involvement, honor roll, student council, NHS, but there's many experiences that you guys share that can speak to a lot of the criteria for the Daniel Scholarship, as well as many other scholarships like Boettcher and other scholarships that you'll apply to. So making sure you can think about what are those other experiences that you can write towards as far as what you're passionate about. What makes the Daniel Scholarship unique? Similar to Boettcher, it's a program that's grounded in values. There's more than just financial support. It's more than just a check. And it offers resources, encouragement, and training. Kind of the eligibility for Daniel Scholarship, it's for high school seniors graduating from a school in Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, or Wyoming. Again, it's for residents of those 4 states, and it's for citizens or permanent residents of the United States. There's an academic eligibility on the front side of the scholarship as well, earning a minimum grade point average of 3.0 on an unweighted scale, SAT math score of 490, evidence-based writing and reading score of 490, and then an ACT score of 18 in each category. And so as things continue to transpire and develop with testing, those are our current kind of requirements of where our application falls, at least for this year. Financial eligibility, there's an eligibility piece of Bill created the scholarships for students that needed aspects of funding and for their 4 years. And so there's an AGI, or adjusted gross income, and these numbers are taken from parents or guardians as far as being financially eligible on the front side of the application. And so you would do the financial eligibility, and then you get into the application. But we take essentially the adjusted gross income. So how much does your family make? And those are on tax returns, and they're reported to the scholarship on that eligibility questionnaire on the front side of the application. So what does the scholarship cover? It covers a 4-year undergraduate degree at any accredited nonprofit 2 or 4-year college, and it covers the total cost to go to school. So in that, it's tuition and fees, room and board, books and supplies, and miscellaneous educational expenses. So we take the total cost and we take the financial resources that the student receives from the institution, as the institution's going to give you grants and scholarships for attending there, which one of the financial resources is the EFC, or the expected family contribution. And then we cover the remaining unmet need up to $25,000 per year towards the student's total cost of attendance, which again is, we take into account the unmet need after applying their EFC, other scholarships, and financial aid. Daniel scholars may attend any accredited college or university in the United States. So we have a similar timeline to most scholarships. This happens your senior year, whereas there's an application in the fall, kind of processing in January. We have an interview component to our process where community members are doing the interviews of students and then awarding March of their senior year. And so with that, I'll ask Stephanie to come back on. We're very excited to just share with you guys as far as just our general knowledge of scholarships and be able to answer some questions that you have that would be helpful and beneficial in the process for the next handful of years, or the current year for those of you that are seniors.
Great, thank you, Josh. We're getting a lot of great questions here. So I'll just go ahead and start answering some. One is, do students ever apply for more than one and get more than one if they don't get a full scholarship? And do you want to tackle that one, Josh?
Yeah, and I think it just depends on everyone's unique situation. As Stephanie shared, you're going to apply to institutions, and the institutions, are going to award students to various degrees on various things. Likewise, you'll receive different scholarships that, add up or are, depending on amount of scholarships received or the dollar amounts of the scholarships themselves, it will change what that financial picture looks like. But essentially, there's a certain cost for every student that heads off to an institution where you're able to receive a certain amount towards all kind of academic expenses. And so there is essentially a ceiling at some point to the maximum amount students can receive for going to school. And within those costs, it depends on the scholarships specifically on how they're structured. Now, Daniel's fund has recently changed, and so there is room to receive multiple scholarships within the Daniel Scholarship specifically. And Stephanie, can you share a little bit about Boettcher and the new model?
Absolutely, yes, thank you. Josh is right. There's usually a ceiling, and how my boss sometimes has described it is more like a glass, and the cost of attendance is the empty glass, and you can take scholarships to fill the glass right up to the top, but you can't have water or scholarships spilling out of it. So with the Boettcher Scholarship, if you go to one of the schools on the cost of attendance model, that basically fills the glass right to the top, so you wouldn't be able to accept scholarships on top of it. If you were to go to one of the schools on the tuition and fees model, that covers the tuition and fees, obviously, but there's still housing and a few other expenses. So you would be able to take other forms of scholarship on top of that to meet that additional cost.
I think one thing, to encourage you in is that, apply for as many as you can to hopefully, again, fill that glass completely up. And obviously, the more you apply to, you increase your odds of receiving those funding amounts to fill your cup.
Yeah. Okay, we have one question. I've gotten started on my apps but haven't yet started applying for specific scholarships. Do I still have a chance if I start applying in the next few days? I would say yes. Every scholarship has different deadlines. Our scholarship is due November 1st, so there's still another just over a month to go. Your scholarship's about to open, correct?
Yeah, we open up October 1st, and so we'll be
October.
ready to go at that time. This Friday.
Awesome. Yeah, so do go ahead and start applying as soon as possible. Yeah, you definitely want to give yourself plenty of time. I see Josh is answering a Daniel specific question, so I'll move on to the next one, which is, are you considering SAT scores this year? Josh, I believe, already addressed that in his presentation, that they have a test requirement. For Boettcher, we are test optional this year. So you, if you don't have a test score, you can still apply for the Boettcher Scholarship. We do encourage you to submit test scores if you have them, just because they are one additional piece of information we have about you as an applicant. We are mainly looking, though, for that in context in terms of, is this something that can help the student? We're not necessarily looking at it as a way to kick a student out. It's more like more information to help us find out if they're a good candidate. So Josh, we have a question. You might have already answered this. How many people get the Daniels Scholarship?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And again, the scholarship covers 4 states. We hope to give away 250 different scholarships this year, which is great, and looking forward to doing that. And just to kind of clarify the allotment is that it's divided up geographically. And so 75% of those scholarships come, the dollar amounts come from Colorado. And so there is a greater amount for Colorado high school seniors. Yep. Absolutely.
Does it
There's
matter
there's a great question about major, and I think well, I'll clarify. Just generally speaking, I think as you apply to institutions, you'll realize that at every institution there are all kinds of different scholarships. You really, at each specific institution, when you apply to attend those universities, usually through your application, there might be additional questions to apply for scholarships, but your candidacy is considered based on everything that you submit. And so part of that is major. And so a handful of different universities or institutions have different scholarships based on major. But then generally speaking, if there's general or outside scholarship providers, when you apply, there's some that will, where major isn't an impact for Daniels funds specifically. What you would like to study doesn't necessarily connotate anything as far as your ability to pursue a degree and our ability to support you in that. So but I'm sure there are other outside scholarships that want to fund engineers or entrepreneurs or different various ways. So it's really all just dependent on the scholarship itself and what they're desiring to select, which I think is important. As Stephanie shared those great resources, understanding who the scholarships are and what they select based on will even probably inform your ability to be more targeted and specific at the ones that are a better fit for you and will fit the criteria in which you would best be an applicant. Stephanie, can you clarify major choice with the Boettcher Scholarship?
Yeah, for us, it does not matter what students want to major in. Basically, it's all just about going to a school in Colorado. And that's one of the things I like best about it, is because then we have a large variety of majors amongst our Boettcher scholars. So there's a lot of people in our community doing great things. And it also allows students some freedom to change their mind and explore a little bit while they're in college. So that's really fun. So here's a good question. Do you recommend a shotgun method of applying for scholarships of $500 to $1,000, or concentrate on larger ones? What's the best method for a well-qualified student? I'd say it's good to do a blend of the two, because as you've probably gathered, some of the larger scholarships, more comprehensive ones like ours, tend to require a little more work, but they're also a bit bigger in terms of what they offer. So it's good to try for a few large scholarships, a few medium scholarships, and a few fun ones as well, just because you might find that you would finance your college education with a package of multiple scholarships. For instance, when I went to college, I applied for the Boettcher Scholarship, did not get it, but I got a scholarship through DU that was fairly large. I got a couple of medium scholarships, and I actually got a $500 scholarship from the US Postal Service because my grandpa was a letter carrier, paid for books. It all added up and made it affordable. So, do you have any suggestions, Josh?
No, yeah, that's great advice. I think understanding who you are, kind of having your counselor help you identify from their opinion on like where where to invest your time, but also knowing yourself and kind of what you want to go for and the things you're passionate about, and it all adds up. Really, you're looking for a way, a way forward, and so kind of the work you put in on this side, will help save and kind of fund a potential future 4 years. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a great question on what qualifies a scholarship as prestigious. Do some colleges value this more than others? You kind of shared a little bit about that in your last statement. Stephanie, do you want to expand on that a little more?
Sure. Yeah. What makes it prestigious is, I think, just how well known it is. And I think that's all contextual. So for instance, the Boettcher Scholarship is quite prestigious here in Colorado. It's been around for a long time, so we're well known in the community. It's probably a little less prestigious outside of Colorado just because they're not as familiar with it. Do some colleges value this more than others? Again, it's probably just contextual in Colorado. Whereas the Daniels Fund Scholarship, I'm sure, is pretty prestigious everywhere because it's a scholarship that can be used anywhere in the United States. So that is definitely a bit different.
Yeah, it really does depend on your context because, we have one student at Rice University and, the university down in Houston, people have no idea who the Daniels Fund is. So there's aspects of prestige that is pretty subjective and determined by kind of context or geography. So, I think that's where, for you students to be confident in who you are and, the scholarships that you're applying to and kind of owning and being passionate about what makes you a great applicant that will then carry over into how you show up in these different ways.
Are non-citizens allowed to apply? I think that definitely depends on the scholarship. For Boettcher Scholarship, as long as you have some sort of legal residence or lawful presence, you can apply. And again, that's a good question to email me. We'll put our emails in the chat or on the screen later, and I'll be happy to help review any eligibility questions. And you want to take it for the Daniels Fund, Josh?
Yeah, and for the Daniels Fund, it's for U.S. citizens and permanent residents. One aspect of kind of that question that I would encourage you is as you apply to universities, every university is going to list off different resources they have. And in regards to citizenship, that is one usually that you can find some categorization of specific scholarships designated different ways, but yeah.
Are there certain types of colleges that you allow and certain types that you don't allow? Yeah, again, pretty scholarship specific. For us, it has to be a 4-year college or university. So for Boettcher scholarships cannot be used at community colleges or any of the for-profit colleges, but this still covers the 16 primary college and universities in the state of Colorado. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, for Daniels Fund, students can go to any nonprofit university, which you probably don't know the difference of which one's for-profit or nonprofit, but you can simply Google your university and one of those phrases, most are nonprofit. Essentially, it has to do with like the standing with the government and taxation, but most universities are nonprofit. But and it is for Daniels Fund, it's anywhere kind of in the nation. But we have built in, and I know Boettcher does too, part of their process is kind of help with kind of college choice. And so those usually show up later in the conversation throughout the selection cycle.
Great. Let's see. What is a great way to keep track of all the activities done over the years by students, extracurricular activities, etc.? That's a good question. On the Boettcher Foundation website, boettcherfoundation.org, we have an FAQs and resources section for the scholarship. And one of the things we have on there is a resource packet, and it kind of outlines, it has a little chart that's like, what are your activities, how many hours per week, weeks per year. So that could be kind of helpful if you're wanting to start just working on that. But it might just be a matter of kind of taking some time and trying to think through and remember all the things you've done over the last few years. Ask your parents to help you. They might say, oh, remember how you also that summer helped mow the lawn for your neighbor? That might be something you want to include. Ask your guidance counselor, and they might be able to help fill in gaps or even think of things that you might not have thought of as something appropriate for a scholarship application, but they might say that's worth sharing. So I don't know if you have any tips.
Not anything else that I would add specifically on that one. There were a handful of questions about timing on scholarships, which I think is important to talk about. And I kind of shared in the middle of, before I started sharing about the Daniel Scholarship, but you know, it's never too early to learn about some of these scholarships and the things they're looking for. You know, similar to Boettcher, you know, students are growing and learning all the time, and many of you are even, you know, giving extra time this evening to think about your future. And so, understanding what the scholarships are and how you can continue to develop and work towards something. But most scholarships you do apply to your senior year, and there's opportunities to take a leave or to take a gap year. And a lot of those are dependent, but the traditional cycle does tend to be the traditional senior year or your final year in college. Stephanie, can you speak to that question a little bit about when to apply and taking a leave?
Yes, that's a great question, because we're getting more and more requests to consider taking a gap year between high school and college. So for the Boettcher Scholarship, you still have to apply in what is your final year of high school. So for most students, that's your senior year, your fourth year. For students who are graduating early, that might be your third year of high school. It's the equivalent of your senior year. So whatever is your final year of high school. You unfortunately cannot apply for our scholarship after you have graduated. So if you're interested in the Boettcher Scholarship, you need to apply that final year. And then you can write to us to request a process for deferring your scholarship if you were to receive the Boettcher Scholarship. And it is an application process because that's reviewed on a case-by-case basis, but it is something that we will consider and look at. I'll go ahead and start this one. Is there a particular format of essay for these scholarships? I would say nothing standard. Everyone is a little bit different. So you need to make sure that you are reading every scholarship and college application essay and minding the instructions, whether that's word count, spacing. They will usually tell you in the instructions what they want. Sometimes you can use an essay that you've written as a framework for others, but every single time you have to make sure that you're reading those instructions and tailoring the essay. So for instance, if you were using a story for our scholarship and we were asking for a time you demonstrated leadership and you spoke about being, you know, a Boy Scout troop leader in an event, you know, a camping trip you went on and you focused on leadership, and then you wanted to use that same camping trip for Josh's scholarship but wanted to talk about service, you might use the same thing but focus more on how you were performing a service activity there versus leadership for us. So you just need to make sure that even if you use the same framework or the same idea, you're tweaking it.
Yeah, that's great. Knowing the audience that you're writing towards is really important. And I think it would give you an advantage as you think and consider all these different scholarships. There's some questions specifically about university scholarships and then scholarships for universities that are maybe outside of our region, outside of Colorado. I think referencing Penn State. Just some some general thoughts on university scholarships is, again, when you apply to the university and when they accept you, they likely want you to go there. And so I think, they're going to do things to award you or package you with some scholarships to potentially have you attend there. A handful of universities maybe have additional information that you would apply for scholarships, but universities are awarding scholarships based on merit or academics, based on finances, so based on need, and various other criterias. One thing that I would recommend is, if you're going to Penn State and you want to apply for scholarships there, visit their website, and they likely have a scholarships page, and on there they likely have outside scholarships. So different scholarships that Penn State partners with in being awarded to students that go there. Sometimes, again, they're going to be specific or based on region or geography or some other factor. But most universities have some scholarship pages that have internal and external opportunities to apply for. Any other thoughts on university scholarships, Stephanie?
No, I think you covered that very well. Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Scott, the schools want you to attend, and even if they don't have a scholarship, they might be able to point you to additional resources. So, for instance, I've gotten some are there scholarships for community colleges or for students who have disabilities, and there are scholarships for everything. There's a left-handed scholarship. There's a scholarship for making your prom dress out of duct tape. There's a lot of fun stuff out there. So I think a lot of fun stuff and a lot of tailored things. So it's a matter of just kind of asking around. If you're interested in a community college, contact their financial aid office, and they'll be able to help point you in the right direction.
It might be good to clarify too that upon acceptance, the universities will then follow up with the financial aid award, where they're formally awarding you these scholarships that internally at their universities that you applied for. So that's a part of the acceptance process when you get there in March, February, March, April, as far as the cycle and the process.
Great clarification. Let's see. Josh, we're doing a good job of kind of summarizing multiple multiple questions. Is there a lower chance of getting the scholarship if your siblings got one years ago? I'd say no lower, no higher. Everybody's an individual. So, and you're evaluated individually. Yeah, so that's a good question.
That's the same for Daniel's son as well.
Mm-hmm. Can you apply for scholarships even if you don't know where you'll be attending college? I would say yes. Yeah, and sometimes it's good to do that because applying for multiple scholarships gives you opportunities. So while you're waiting to hear from colleges, it might help you to know or make that choice of where you ultimately decide to go, because you know if you've got enough scholarships to cover the cost at that college or university.
Our time's coming pretty close to a close.
Yeah.
And so Stephanie, if you can summarize if there's one more question, but just want to let everyone know, I just dropped in the chat the websites for both of our specific scholarships, as well as an email that might be helpful if there's any follow-up questions or you'd like to reach out with.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, I would say as we're starting to just see more, these questions get a little more specific, the basic tip I would give you is communicate. Every scholarship is a little bit different. So reach out and ask them. That's why people like myself and Josh work where we do. We're here to help and support you. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to email us. Josh put our emails in the chat. Thank you for doing that. And best of luck to you all in your scholarship search.
Yeah, we really hope that you can continue to utilize the resources that you have. Your counselors are a great place. Obviously, you're giving time on a weeknight to learn more, and slowly it's the process of grabbing these puzzle pieces and putting them together, really to find a way for that picture of what your future looks like and how higher education and hopefully the way to fund that works for you. So we wish you the best on behalf of the Daniels Fund. It's been a pleasure to speak with you this evening.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for your time. I'm going to do a final wrap up here. All righty. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us this evening. When you close this window, there will be a link to a very quick 5-question survey. We appreciate any feedback you can provide. You'll be able to find this session's recording as well as all the other sessions recordings at strivescan.com/greaterdenver. Again, thank you to both of our panelists here this evening, and thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful evening.